In the music world, subgenres were not so much of a concept back in the 1960s. You simply had genres like rock and roll, country, pop, rhythm and blues, classical, heavy metal, which was very new at the time, soul, jazz, folk, and so much more. And in most people's eyes, only a few artists and bands were deemed kings of these genres. For example, Elvis Presley is the king of rock and roll, and Michael Jackson is the king of pop. However, some believe that other artists deserve the title of king alongside these legends, or should I say, kings. Two men from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania created something so unique that it revolutionized how we view music today. These two men are named Daryl Hall and John Oates. Back in 1967, Daryl Hall and John Oates met at a local venue called the Adelphi Ballroom, which was located in West Philadelphia. Daryl Hall was performing in a dance event with his musical group named the Temptones. Hosted by Jerry Bishop, a disc jockey, the event featured the Temptones and John Oates' band, the Masters. Everything was set until the Temptones were ready to play. A fight suddenly broke out between the rival high school fraternities within the audience. The fight became so dangerous that knives and guns were used, causing Daryl and John to flee for the service elevator in the building at the exact same time. In the elevator, the two discovered that they were both attending the same school, Temple University. Soon after, they became friends, then roommates, and eventually bandmates. Skip ahead to 1972, and Daryl Hall and John Oates released their first album. Wait, it's called Whole Oats? That's kind of funny, actually. Well, I wouldn't say this album was a huge hit, but it was produced by some big-name people such as Arif Mardin and Todd Rundgren. In fact, their next two albums, Abandoned Luncheonette and War Babies, both of which were produced a year after one another, were not very successful either. However, in 1975, their fourth and most self-centered sounding title for an album was released. Go ahead, take a wild guess for what the title is. Yep, you guessed it, it's called Daryl Hall and John Oates. What were you guys doing? You could have at least picked a more unique title. I guess it can't be helped now, especially since one specific song from the album put them on the map and changed their level of popularity forever. A few years before their Daryl Hall and John Oates album was released, Oates introduced Hall to a woman by the name of Sarah Allen. Sarah Allen was a flight attendant, or a stewardess, back in the days of the 1970s. I'm pretty sure discrimination laws were what changed the name. Anyway, both bandmates were living in New York at the time when Daryl was introduced to Sarah. Fun fact, John Oates took that chance meeting with Sarah and turned it into a song for their second album in 1973, Abandoned Luncheonette. That song was titled Las Vegas Turnaround. Fast forward to 1975, and Daryl and Sarah were already a few years into a romantic relationship that would last for over 30 years. During their Daryl Hall and John Oates album, Hall decided to write a song about his relationship with Sarah Allen that would end up reaching number 4 on the US Billboard Hot 100 Singles chart by 1976. This song was titled Sarah Smile. Personally, Sarah Smile is one of my favorite songs of all time. Seriously, give it a listen. It's a sweet-sounding song with its clever lyrics, melodious background vocals, and completed with Daryl Hall's unique and tuneful voice. And after 3 years of experimenting with rock, folk, and soul styles of genres, Hall and Oates finally found their niche with the pop song that was Sarah Smile. The Daryl Hall and John Oates album was later known as the Silver Album, but their level of popularity didn't stop there. These two legends continued to release some amazing songs, such as Rich Girl from the album Bigger Than Both of Us in 1976, Kiss on My List and You Make My Dreams from the album Voices in 1980, Private Eyes, Looking for a Good Sign, I Can't Go For That and Did It in a Minute from the album Private Eyes in 1981, Man-Eater from the album H2O in 1982, and finally, Out of Touch from the album Big Bam Boom in 1984. All of these songs were basically in the top 10 most popular during the 1980s, with the exception of Looking for a Good Sign. I just really love that song. Okay, who am I kidding? I love all of these songs.
You were so hot. You were so successful. You had 10 or 11 straight top 10 hit records. Do you ever worry about the day when you'll put one out there and it'll go...
Yeah, sure.
Are you prepared for that day? It's got to happen.
Well, we like to think that we are. You never are really prepared for it, but it's, yeah. I mean, we make music for other reasons. I mean, we want to make a lot of money, sure. You know, that's fun. Yeah. But it's, I think we've been making music most of our lives, and I think there's other things that are more important. The commercial success is great, but it's not the only thing that we're working for.
The 1980s was a positive change for the iconic duo, because in 1979, they felt that their music was being filtered through outside producers, as well as a failed album called Ecstatic. Their studio musicians did not quite understand their own ideas and tastes, so in turn, they hired Hall's girlfriend, Sarah Allen, as well as her younger sister, Jana, to help write songs. Wow, that's crazy. They also hired a lead guitarist, drummer, and later a bassist. The 1980s was truly a turning point for their ongoing success.
Sarah Allen, can you tell us about Sarah Allen? The lady's name pops up on a lot of singles that you've done, a lot of tracks you've done.
Yeah, well...
Can you explain who she is? Obviously a very secretive person.
Yeah, well, she's secretive, all right. Now, she's been my roommate, live-in, whatever you want to call that. I don't know what the word is. And I can't find the right word. Yes, a very good friend of mine, close friend of mine for a long time.
Close and personal friend.
Yes, a personal friend of mine. And she's been writing with us for years. She writes a lot of the lyrics with us, and her sister also writes with us. She writes music. You know, she's a songwriter. So we're kind of a foursome these days.
So she's totally a writer, or does she get out and do other things in this business? Like
No, she stays. She really doesn't want to involve herself in it any more than just in the creative side of it.
Already by 1983, Hall & Oates was one of the greatest pop music bands in the United States. They had 5 #1 singles, 2 solid top 10 albums, and were even one of the most popular icons on MTV.
Hi, I'm Daryl Hall.
And I'm John Oates. You're watching MTV Music Television.
Nothing else like it anywhere.
It was then that they released their first greatest hits album titled Rock and Soul Part 1. One specific song, Say It Isn't So, was put on that album and fought for the #1 spot alongside Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson's Say 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 song, although it only remained in the #2 spot. From 1985 to 1988, with already a total of 12 albums, they took a break from their almost yearly releases, bringing their focus to other projects and goals that would keep their title. Other than that, there's nothing else that's really that significant regarding them during the mid-1980s. Trust me, I did a lot of research and couldn't find much. In 1987, they were signed by their third record company, Arista Records, since their contract with RCA Records had run out. Something really funny was that when they released their first album with Arista Records titled Ooh Yeah, there were songs on there, along with singles, that credited them as Daryl Hall John Oates, missing the word "and" in between their names. Oh god. At this point, the duo was at a platinum status, but they recorded one more album with Arista Records titled Change of Season in 1990. Jana Allen, Sarah's younger sister, can be credited for co-writing many famous Hall & Oates songs, such as Kiss on My List and Private Eyes, both of which reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1981. She even co-wrote songs on their top 10 singles, Did It in a Minute and Method of Modern Love. Cheap Trick, Peter Wolf, and Joan Jett were artists that she wrote alongside as well. She accomplished so much in a very short amount of time because unfortunately at the age of 36 in 1993, she passed away from leukemia, greatly affecting many, especially Daryl and Sarah. Marigold Sky was released in 1997 by their new record company, Push Records. This would be their last album released in the 1990s and their first after 7 years. In 2003, 2004, and 2006, U-Watch Records signed their final 3 albums, Do It for Love, Our Kind Soul, and Home for Christmas. But between those albums, the duo had to cancel a tour in 2005 due to Hall being diagnosed with Lyme disease. According to what Hall stated in an interview many years later in 2011, he had been living in the countryside of Philadelphia and was bitten many times over the years until he finally caught the disease.
Well, you find out you have it if suddenly you're down on the floor is really what's all about. I had some gradual things. I was noticing things like increase in allergic reaction to things. Like things I was never allergic to, I suddenly became allergic to. Like extreme, like things like celery, of all weird things. You know, I broke out, my eyes swelled up. All kinds of strange things like that. I started getting tremors.
This came on when? How many years ago?
This came on about 2.5 years ago. And then one day I woke up and I had this really bad fever.
For those of you who don't know what Lyme disease is, the arachnid known as a tick is a major nuisance found throughout the world. Most, but not all, carry the disease that could potentially be transmitted to humans. When the disease is transmitted, the following can occur: fever, rash, facial paralysis, an irregular heartbeat, and arthritis. And if it is left untreated, in some cases, it could result in death. Fortunately for Hall, he caught his Lyme disease early enough that he was able to treat it. This definitely was a minor setback for Hall & Oates, but there is one more major struggle that I will be covering at the end, so stay tuned. In late 2007, Daryl Hall had a brilliant idea that would bring his music to the internet. This was a live music web series titled Live from Daryl's House that ran for almost 15 years, containing 90 episodes thus far, and is probably still ongoing to this day.
Hi everybody, welcome to the first set of Live from Daryl's House. Here we are in what is going to be eventually the great room. It's sort of under construction, as is everything else in Daryl's house. So here we go, man. We're going to play lots of songs for you, and hope you enjoy it.
The show features Daryl Hall with his band, along with many famous guest artists for each episode at his house in New York. The purpose of this series is so artists can express their creativity freely while the audience experiences it live, similar to watching a free concert. In my opinion, that is a very clever idea on Hall's part. Nice job, Daryl. It was originally supposed to be an internet series and was later broadcast on television. The episodes used to be found on the archive section of the LFDH's website, which is sadly no longer available. But thankfully, clips from the show can still be found on YouTube.
Child of Philadelphia, a child of the 70s, a child of the 80s, a child of soul, a child of recognizable hairstyles, a child of mustaches. Join me for one glorious night in making the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the Hall and Oates of Fame, ladies and gentlemen.
By 2013, the two were announced as 2014 nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Fast forward to 2020 during the time of COVID, and Daryl Hall began working on songs for the duo's next album. Obviously, that never came to pass since I mentioned that their last album, Home for Christmas, was in 2006. It wasn't so much that COVID affected this new album, but rather that they felt like it would be irrelevant to what was happening in that period. Time was moving too fast for this pair, because even their longtime keyboardist, Elliot Lewis, departed from the band in 2023. Shortly after, Hall & Oates were inducted into the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame. But that's not all for 2023. Late last year, something devastating struck Hall & Oates that ended in potentially splitting them up forever.
Half of the legendary duo known as Hall & Oates, he has a new solo album, and he's also opening up about the fallout with his former creative partner, Daryl Hall.
Yeah, Daryl Hall filed a lawsuit against Oates last year over their music catalog, and as John Oates told me, the dispute might jeopardize their future.
Allegedly, John Oates had planned to sell off his share of a joint venture of Whole Oates Enterprises to a music publisher titled Primary Wave Music, a third-party company. This was done without Daryl Hall's permission, and as a result, he sued John Oates for violating the terms of their business agreement. And if that wasn't enough, Hall even issued a restraining order against Oates amongst all other charges. Up until now, in 2024, that would be the end of not only their partnership, but the possibility of them never performing again. John Oates even stated in a recent interview that he had moved on from Hall & Oates, even so much as adding that they would never perform again. Daryl Hall made the same statement in a later interview, ultimately sealing that fact. The band Daryl Hall and John Oates was a blend of rock and roll, soul, pop, and rhythm and blues. What made them so unique was simply due to that mixture of multiclass genres. The once iconic duo set the stage for future bands and artists, and in my opinion, should be deemed kings of incorporating multiple genres within their music. Thank you so much for watching. This video took a lot of time to make, so I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And please make sure to turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. More quality videos like this one coming soon. Once again, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.